Double radical equations are equations that contain two radicals, as this example does. Your first job is going to be to think about how the single radical problems work. We isolated the radical and eliminated it that way. With a double radical equation, the same process will be taken on, but we'll do it one at a time. I'm going to choose to isolate this guy, and because he's negative on the left-hand side, I'm going to move him over to the right, so that I'm going to end up with the square root of 4x. I'm going to move this 2 back over to the left-hand side, so it's going to become a negative 2, equals, now remember, this entire piece is going to move over to the right-hand side, but only the coefficient sign is going to be affected. This will become a positive square root of 4x minus 20. At this point, we've isolated one of our radicals, and I usually choose to isolate the uglier one first, or the one with more stuff underneath it, which we have. Now we're going to square both sides. And on the right-hand side again, when you square the square root, the 4x minus 20 simply pops down. On the left-hand side, however, this does imply a little bit more interesting process, doesn't it? It's telling us, hey, now I've got two of those. We have a square root of 4x minus 2 and then a second square root of 4x minus 2 that we're going to have to multiply together. So let's do it. And again, we will show the entire process on this one just because it's a little bit more interesting. First, start off by distributing the square root of 4x onto every piece in the second parentheses. Square root of 4x times the square root of 4x is 4x. The square root of 4x times a negative 2 is minus 2 of those square roots of 4x. Once we finish distributing that guy, I'm going to scoot on over and distribute the square root of the negative 2 onto everything in the second parentheses. Negative 2 times the square root of 4x is minus 2 square roots of 4x. Negative 2 times negative 2 is plus 4. The right-hand side will just copy down. I'm going to widen the shot just a little bit. Now, combine like terms and clean it up a little bit, and let's see what we have left over. I'm going to put my 4x and this positive 4 first, and then I have a minus 4 of those. We have two of them, two negative 2 square roots of 4x. After combining, we get negative 4 square roots of 4x. On the right-hand side, we still have a 4x minus 20. Now, it looks like we're down to, believe it or not, a single radical equation at this point. So we isolate the single radical. So I'm going to move the 4x back over to the right. That's going to cause the other one to cancel on the left and right-hand sides there. And we move it over. I'm going to move the 4 over to the right-hand side as well. It's going to leave me with negative 4 square roots of 4x and negative 24. At this point, you can still go ahead and continue to isolate him a little bit more by dividing both sides by negative 4. You don't have to divide off that final constant if it's going to make it any kind of fraction over here, unless you want to. Here, it's not going to do anything but clean itself up nicer, so we're going to go ahead and do it. The square root of 4x is equal to 6. We're almost finished. At this point, we're going to, notice I got down to a single radical equation. It's isolated, so I'm going to square both sides. Now we have 4x equals, and 6 squared is 36. After dividing both sides by 4, we end up with our x value of 9. A second example I'd like to do with you, oops, I'll leave that up for a second longer, is the square root of 2x plus 6 minus the square root of x plus 4 equals 1. Again, start off by isolating one of your radicals. I think he's a little bit uglier than the other one, so I'm going to isolate him first. We have the square root of 2x plus 6 equals, and again, remember, when you move this guy over to the right-hand side, only his coefficient changes sign, so he becomes a positive square root of x plus 4 plus 1. Does it matter which one you write first? Not really. I consistently, again, just for myself, put the radical out in front. I like to get rid of him first. Now, at this point, we've isolated our first radical that we're going to eliminate, so we square both sides. This simply comes down as 2x plus 6, but on the right-hand side, we do get that FOIL process implied again, so we're going to write them out, expand it out, x plus 4 plus 1 times the square root of x plus 4 plus 1. Okay, let's start our FOIL process. Now the left-hand side again, nothing's changing, so we're just going to copy him down. On the right-hand side, however, start by distributing the square root of x plus 4. Square root of x plus 4 times himself is just going to get rid of the square root, and it'll come down as an x plus 4. The square root of x plus 4 times 1 is one of those, and you can choose to write the 1 out in front or let it be assumed as I am doing. Once you finish distributing that, scoot on over and distribute the 1 onto the second parentheses. 1 times the square root of x plus 4 is the square root of x plus 4. And 1 times 1 is 1. Now let's combine like terms and clean it up some and see what we've ended up with. 2x plus 6 is equal to, let's see, we've got 1x, a 4 and a 1 makes 5, and I've got 2 of those. Now I'm going to move everything but the radical over to the left-hand side. I'd like to get him isolated. See, when I move this x back over here, it becomes a negative x, giving me 1x total left over. When I move the 5 over to the left-hand side, it also becomes a negative 5, leaving me a positive 1. And let's see here. As you can see on this example, it isn't really to my advantage this time to completely isolate the radical. Dividing by a 2 here will make two little fractions on this side. That would be okay, but not something I have to deal with, and I'd rather not. So let's go ahead now. We're going to square both sides. This again implies a FOIL process, and so you're going to go ahead and expand it out so that we don't forget we have to multiply it out in a FOIL process. And let's see, 2 squared is 4. And when you square the square root again, that stuff just comes on down. Now, because they were multiplied up here as you were squaring them, when you bring them down after squaring them, you still have to take their product. So don't forget that part. Now, let's do our FOIL process. Now, this one's a little nicer, so I'm going to go ahead and let you know that after you do all your math voodoo on it and clean it up and everything, we get x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 4x plus 16. We're going to move everything over to the left-hand side at this point, and it looks like a quadratic ready to happen to us again. We have x squared minus 2x minus 15 equals 0. And again, a very nice quadratic that does factor in, so that's the method I'll choose. If you are allergic to factoring, though, please use your quadratic formula. It works every single time. Let's see here. X minus 5 is equal to 0. X plus 3 is equal to 0. So after setting each one of those equal to 0, I can solve for our x's. They are 5 and negative 3.